Hello everyone, welcome to my channel Bibliophila, where I discuss books that inspire us, enrich our minds and broaden our mental horizon. Let's begin today's episode with a review of yet another book. A pair of round eyes, unnecessarily large ears and a head piled with unruly hair. That was Dashu. The very sight of him reminded one of the large koi fish of Jessore, but when he walked or talked in a hurry, his flailing arms and legs would remind one of a lobster more than anything else. Sukumar Ray delved into a unique genre of pure nonsense and gibberish, a pioneering work in Bengali literature. Work that was compared to Lewis Carrol's Alice in Wonderland. An amazing sense of humour, sharp power of observation and unfathomed wit makes Sukumar Ray's books equally approachable by students as well as adults. Dashu's impish and notorious attitude has us rolling with laughter. Once Rampodo brought a pot of mihidana to school. During lunch break, the students shared it amongst themselves, all except Dashu. He was enemies with Rampodo and simply could not stand the sight of him. The students urged Rampodo to give some of the mihidana to Dashu, to which he obliged. Dashu accepted the offer, but then he went and fed the mihidana to the Darwan's goat in front of everyone. After recess, their Sanskrit teacher asked them to recite the declensions of the word river and then went off to sleep. The students took out their books, chanted some nonsense for some time and then started playing among themselves. Nobody was aware what Dashu was up to. All of a sudden, there was a soft pop under the teacher's chair and then a pandemonium broke out, a series of boom, crash, bang, sizzle, rocking the entire school. The teacher gave a dreadful shriek, leaped up from his chair and landed in a heap in the middle of the classroom. After all had quietened down, the teacher noticed the pot of mihidana under his chair. Likewise, Rampodo was about to be beaten up. Just then, Dashu showed my slate to Pandit Moshai and complained, "Look sir, when you were sleeping, these fellows were playing games on their slates. Here, you can see the grid for noughts and crosses." My name was of course written on the slate. Pandit Moshai was about to give me a tremendous slap when he suddenly seemed to falter. Glaring at Dashu, he said, "Shut up, who told you I was sleeping?" Dashu gaped for a while and replied, "But weren't you snoring, sir?" Pandit Moshai instantly changed the topic and inquired, "Really, they were playing games, and what were you doing at that time?" Dashu answered without batting an eyelid, "I was lighting the crackers." Everyone was dumbfounded. What a thing to say. Once during class hours, someone complained to the teacher that Bhola was making faces at them. Bhola promptly replied that he was scratching his ears and that made his face look like a monkey. The teacher, who was fast asleep, did not even bother to open his eyes and ordered someone to keep standing as a punishment. After some time, the students noticed that Bhola was not standing. They told Ganesh Chandra to ask the teacher about it. Gansha was a bit thick in the head. He got up slowly and started calling, "Pandit Moshai, oh Pandit Moshai." "What's it now?" said the teacher, now irritated. Gansha or Ganesh Chandra asked in great anxiety, "Who is supposed to stand, Pandit Moshai?" The teacher opened his eyes, glared for a second and snapped angrily, "I asked you, now keep standing." Having said that, he closed his eyes again. Ganesh Chandra remained standing again. There was a silence for another minute or so. All of a sudden, Bhola said, "Hey, wasn't he asked to stand on one foot?" "Never, he simply asked me to stand," Ganesh said. Bishu said, "He raised a finger while speaking to you. That means you have to stand on one foot." Ganesh could not deny that the teacher had raised his forefinger while scolding him. Bishu and Bhola were insistent. "Stand on one foot quickly or else we'll complete right now." Poor Ganesh fearfully shifted to one leg. No sooner had he done this, a heated argument broke out between Bhola and Bishu. One said he should stand on his right foot, while the other said no, left foot first. Ganesh was in a terrible dilemma. Once again he attempted to ask the teacher, Pandit Moshai, which foot? The teacher was disturbed by Ganesh Chandra shouting and started to choke dangerously. Someone told Ganesh Chandra to fetch a pail of water, but Ganesh Chandra obliged and poured the water over the teacher's head. That made the choking stop immediately, but Ganesh Chandra's hands shook with terror on seeing the look on his teacher's face. All the faces turned pale, but only Shamlal, who had a perpetually smiling face, could not manage to look serious. The teacher's rage fell upon him. Shamlal tearfully said that Ganesh Chandra had poured the pot of water over his head. On asking Ganesh Chandra, he put the blame on Bhola, who put it on Bishu. The teacher looked at them fiercely for some time and then softened suddenly. Only he knew what tale of mischief he was reminded of from his childhood days. Once Nobin Chandra told his friends at school that he had been attacked by dacoits the other night. Then he proceeded to tell the story. Previous evening, he had gone to Jyotilal's house to study. On his way back, the dacoits had caught him, slapped him round the head and then spread muddy water on his new dress. Then they had ordered him to keep standing by the side of the road with a bag on his head. After 20 minutes of this torture, his uncle had come and fetched him home. When Dashu heard about this, he dropped his book, fell upon the floor and laughed like a hyena. Even the teacher's entry in the classroom could not stop his laughter. Later, he told his friends that he was laughing at Nobin Chandra because when he was returning home the other night, it was Dashu who had ordered him to stand by the road with a bag on his head, and two of his comrades had run up to him, caught him, slapped him round the head and sprayed him with muddy water. Later we come to know that Keshto and another senior had played the prank on Nobin on Dashu's instructions. Once during the holidays, the students decided to put up a play. Dashu was very eager for a part and even persuaded a few to plead his case, but he was refused. Just last year, when we put up our play, Dashu was cast in the role of Senapati or the general, and a pretty mess he had made of the whole thing. When Trichur's spy came to cuffs with the Senapati and challenged him to a duel with the words, "If you have the courage, come, unsheath your sword," Dashu was supposed to roar, "Come, face me in battle," and draw his weapon. But our amateur thespian, finding his sword stuck, tugged at it in vain and forgot to say half his lines in his alarm. "Unsheath your sword," bellowed the spy again, at which the idiot Dashu promptly retorted, "Hang on, can't you see the buckle's jammed?" Luckily, I managed to get the thing out, or the play would have ended there and then. Towards the end, when the Raja asked, "What prize do you desire, Senapati?" Dashu was to reply, "May I always remain in your majesty's service." Instead, the dolt started on the next speech, caught himself up with hasty, "Oh, I forgot," bit his tongue, looked at me and began to laugh. When I glared at him, he controlled his mirth and delivered the right line. When he was refused the privilege of playing a part, he first coaxed, then raged and finally returned to sulk. When the students practiced in the hall, he would glower at them from a corner. Just before the term ended, he struck up a great friendship with Ganesh Chandra, who was supposed to play the part of Meghdut. He would bring him nuts, candies, picture books and even promised to bring him a football. On the day of the play, Dashu marched into the dressing room and started dressing up as Meghdut. The other students objected to this since he was not a participant at all. They went to fetch Ganesh Chandra and found him hiding behind the canteen. On asking, Ganesh Chandra said that Dashu had threatened him to give up the part of Meghdut, otherwise he would not get the football that he was promised. Nobody could persuade Ganesh Chandra to get up on stage and play his part. Finally, they agreed that Dashu should play the part since nobody else was available. The performance began. Dashu didn't cause much trouble in the first scene, just spat pan juice all over the front of the stage once. It was in the third scene that he began to act up. At one point, he was supposed to say only, "If the gods turn away their faces, how can man succeed?" Feeling this was inadequate, he made up a good 5 lines to go before it. The last scene began, and soon enough the minister entered the royal court. He talked about this and that before finally giving king the news, blessing the Maharaj time and again. The god's emissary departs heavenwards. And no sooner were the words out of his mouth than a beaming Dashu presented himself right in the middle of the stage with the words, "And behold, he returns." At this sudden intervention from the divine, the hapless minister entirely lost the thread of his speech. In fact, we all got quite a shock. The play was about to jerk to a halt when Dashu loftily ordered the minister, "Proceed, minister, with what you were saying." The minister grew even more confused. Rakhal, praying the royal guard, stepped forward, meaning to drop a word in Dashu's ear. But the approach of his old adversary only exasperated Dashu, who screamed, "This is the villain who by force would restrain me," and promptly cuffed the turban of Rakhal's head. He then rattled off the king's closing speech. "In this land will no longer be hatred, torture, poverty, and on, till he finished the speech, but not before he had added, by way of valediction, "Now, citizens, off to your own tasks," and brought the performance to an abrupt end. Shamchand's father held a high post in some British office. Likewise, there was no end to his affectations, especially in his choice of clothes and general demeanour. Shamchand would bring an expensive fountain pen to school, which nobody of that day had seen, since they mistook it for a thermometer. He would also wear an expensive watch to school, which nobody in his proximity had ever seen on their own hands. Once a magician from Calcutta had come to organize a magic show in their school. All the students gathered on time and the magic show began. The magician asked, "Does anyone have a watch?" "I have a watch," Shamchand promptly replied. The magician took the watch and examined it gravely. He praised it a great deal and said, "A prize watch this." Then he folded the watch along with its chain in a piece of paper and began to grind it with a mortar and pestle made of iron. Then he held up a few pieces of broken metal and glass and asked Shamchand, "Is this your watch?" You can well imagine what a state Shamchand must have been in. He stared at the pieces open-mouthed. Twice or thrice he started to say something but stopped. Finally, he forced a wry smile on his face and sat down, wiping the sweat off with a handkerchief. Anyway, when the watch was ultimately found intact inside a slice of bread, then Show-Off began rolling with laughter as if he had known the entire trick all along. These are 5 of the 25 tales of Pagla Dashu translated into English from Bengali. I encourage every Bengali-speaking person to read the original stories by Sukumar Ray. After 1915, Sukumar Ray took up the responsibility of the publication of Sandesh and his creativity reached its apex. The 45 limericks of Abol Tabol and many such creative works are appreciated by readers even to this day. I sincerely hope that you have liked this analysis of the book The Crazy Adventures of Pagla Dashu and Kong by Sukumar Ray. If you have, please not forget to like, share, comment and subscribe. I have provided the links of my previous videos in the description below so that you may watch them. I'll be back again with an analysis of yet another book. Till then, happy reading.